Your best engineer hasn't taken a Friday off in 2 years. That's not dedication. That's a structural failure. And by the end of this video, you'll know exactly how to name it, measure it, and fix it before it costs you a quarter. I've built and scaled engineering orgs past 200 people across 5 industries, and I've watched this exact pattern take down teams that were otherwise executing well. The diagnosis is almost always wrong. Here's what's actually happening. Meet Mark, 8 years in, owns 3 critical systems, and he's the reason your 2 AM pages get answered. He's also the reason your org would spend the next 6 months in recovery if he quit on Friday. Your leadership team looks at Mark and sees a high performer. What you've actually built is a load-bearing wall, and you haven't named it yet. And here's what your org almost certainly tried: documentation sprints, knowledge transfer sessions, get Mark to train someone. But none of it worked. Not because your team didn't execute, but because you were treating the wrong problem entirely. Now stay with me here, because what I'm about to show you is the layer that most engineering leaders, they just never see. Here's how we're going to work through this. First, I'll show you the permission system that creates the dependency. Then the exact moment it breaks. Then 3 triggers you can install this week. And finally, the matrix that makes it permanent. So let's go. Priya runs the engineering team that Mark sits on. She's sharp, 2 years into her role, and she genuinely believes she delegates well. She says the right things. You own this sprint. Make the call. I trust your judgment. And she means it. But watch what actually happens. Monday, Mark hits a decision point. Not technically blocked. He could move. But Priya has opinions about this service, so he pings her. She answers in 20 minutes. Progress resumes. Tuesday, a scope question on a vendor integration. Same pattern. Priya jumps on a 15-minute call. Each interruption feels like a collaboration. Stack 4 weeks of that together, and here's what you've actually built. Decision dependency wired into your team's daily behavior. And nobody built that on purpose. Both of them optimized for speed in the moment and built a bottleneck into the org's structure. Priya thinks she has a productivity problem. Mark thinks he has a clarity problem. The company has a decision rights problem. None of them have named it yet, and that's exactly what makes it so expensive, because the bill doesn't arrive until someone takes a vacation. So, Priya takes a 5-day vacation. She's earned it. She puts on the out of office, hands off nothing specific because she assumes the team knows what to do, and she flies out. Day 2 hits. 3 decisions are sitting open. A production deployment is delayed because the team isn't sure who has the authority to approve the config change Priya normally signs off on. A customer escalation comes in, and support doesn't know whether engineering or ops owns the response call. 5 people are waiting. Nobody's moving. By the time Priya checks her phone, because of course she does, 18 hours have passed on the customer issue. 1 delayed deploy, 3 blocked decisions. If that customer was mid-market, you're looking at a real serious revenue risk and an ops team that now knows the system doesn't run without her. That's the more expensive damage. Her team couldn't move, not because they lacked skill, but because Priya had never defined the boundaries. Nobody knew where the decision domains ended and the escalation triggers began, so they waited. That's not a people failure. That right there is an architecture failure. Here are the 3 triggers that would have caught this before Priya ever boarded that flight. Now, these aren't policies. They're signals. And if any one of them is firing in your org right now, you have an architecture problem, not a people problem. Trigger 1. PO if progress requires one specific human. If your team cannot move unless one person answers, approves, joins a call, or interprets something, that's not leadership. That's a single point of failure dressed up as expertise. The fix isn't cross-training. It's removing the requirement for that person's involvement from decisions that shouldn't need them. Trigger 2. P1 if a decision waits more than 24 hours without a clear owner. A delayed decision with no named owner is operational debt. It doesn't show up on your sprint board. It doesn't page anyone. It just compounds quietly until it's a vacation outage or a missed deadline with no obvious cause. Trigger 3. P1 if the same question gets escalated twice in 30 days. Repeat escalation is a signal. It means the rule was never written. The boundary was never set, or the decision domain was defined in someone's head, never put anywhere the team could find it. These aren't rules for the sake of rules. They're signal protection. They tell you where the architecture is missing before the architecture fails you publicly. One metric: average time from decision needed to decision made. Not PR merge time, not sprint velocity. Those measure output. This measures the gap, and the gap is where the dependency lives. Run it for 2 weeks. Pick 10 decisions across functions. Log when the need was identified and when the call was made. What you find will tell you exactly which domains are missing owners. In Priya's case, routine calls, sprint scope trade-offs, minor vendor questions, support escalation routing, they were sitting 36 to 48 hours. After she assigned decision domains, under 4 hours, same team, same complexity, different architecture. Before, waiting for permission. After, waiting for process. That's the entire shift. And this metric isn't just an engineering problem. It shows up in hiring decisions that stall because a senior leader hasn't scheduled a debrief, and customer issues that age because nobody owns the response call, and operations changes sitting in a Slack thread because 2 people think the other one has authority. Decision latency is the tax that your org pays every day for undefined ownership, and most leaders never measure it because it doesn't appear in any standard dashboard. The audit tells you where the gaps are. The matrix is what fills them in. Now, this is not RACI. A RACI tells you who's involved. This tells you who decides and what happens when the edge cases hit. 4 columns: decision area, owner, whether they can act without approval, and what triggers an escalation. Production hotfix goes to the engineering lead. They act. Escalation condition, customer impact, or security risk. Not, let me check with Priya first. Sprint scope trade-offs sit with the product and engineering lead jointly. Escalate only when a deadline or revenue commitment is in play. Hiring screen decisions belong to the hiring manager. Escalation condition is a compensation exception. Not every candidate debrief. Vendor tool selection sits with the team lead up to a defined budget threshold. Escalates on budget or security concerns. Customer incident response belongs to the support or ops. Escalation for legal or SLA exposure. 5 rows, 4 columns. Every one of those decisions was previously being routed to Priya informally because the boundary was never written down. Your team doesn't need more motivation. They need permission, boundaries, and escalation rules that they can point to when someone second guesses a call. The matrix gives them that. It converts implicit norms into explicit authority, and explicit authority is what actually moves organization. Priya built the matrix. She ran the triggers. He handed the domains to the people who should have owned them from the start. And then she took a real vacation. No check-ins, no Slack. The team ran 3 deployments, resolved 2 customer escalations, and made 4 sprint decisions without a single ping to her phone. Now, that's not because she got lucky with the hire. That's because she finally built the system. Mark still owns his 3 systems, but now 2 other engineers can cover any one of them, and your rotation survives the weekend without him. Control doesn't scale. Knowledge hoarding isn't job security. It's a structural liability that compounds every quarter you don't address it. If you want the decision domains matrix template, the link is in the description. Drop your decision latency baseline in the comments, and I'll tell you which layer I'd fix first. Now get to work.